thought was really good. And I kept rehearsing it in my head, making sure it made sense. But before I could even say it, the conversation had already moved on. And this wasn't the first time it happened. In fact, this was a recurring pattern throughout my younger years. That quiet kid in the back, carefully turning an idea over in their mind, patiently waiting for a moment that never really seemed to come. That was me. And I can't even begin to count the number of times where in those moments I thought, why didn't I just say it? Or who would have cared if it wasn't perfect? Hi, my name is Olivia Choi, and today I want to talk about something we've all been getting wrong. Something about silence and introversion, and the ideas that never get to be truly heard. Now in today's world, the loudest voice in the room is often the one that gets heard. But what if I told you that the best idea in the room belongs to the person who hasn't spoken yet? For many years, I thought this was impossible, but today I'm here to prove it's true. For most of human history, introversion has been associated with traits like quiet observations or careful thinking. And when we think of introverts, we often think of people like scholars or philosophers. But somewhere along the way, that script was flipped, and people began to reward speed and visibility. And for me, it felt like no matter where I was, the loudest person always got the most attention. Whether it was in the classroom and it was the students that always seemed to be speaking and sharing their ideas, or it was on the lacrosse and soccer field where it was the most aggressive player that stood out. And every time in these moments, I felt like I was disappearing into the background. And every time I had something to say, it almost felt like it was timed and I had to say it quickly or I would miss my chance. But for an introvert, like me, who needs the extra second to think, it could feel quite impossible to keep up with others. Around 30 to 50% of the population has introverted traits. That's about 1 out of every 2 or 3 people in this room. And research shows that introverts process information on a much deeper level than extroverts. They spend a lot more time running information in their head, testing out different ideas and planning scenarios before they'll say something out loud. And while an extrovert may have expressed themselves in a conversation externally, an introvert will have done it almost all internally. Because quiet minds observe and they reflect, and they really do think deeply before they speak. And whenever I was in class, it wasn't that I had nothing to say, it was that I wanted to say it just right, and I wanted the words to come out perfectly. And if I couldn't do that, then to me it wasn't worth saying at all. But I was wrong, because the world isn't changed by the loudest voices. It's often changed by the strongest ideas. And those ideas don't always come from people talking the most. For example, Albert Einstein, one of the world's greatest scientific minds in human history, who did most of his best thinking in solitude. Or perhaps Beyonce, who despite being one of the world's biggest stage performers, was so terrified of crowds that she would create an alter ego named Sasha Fierce just to walk out there. And finally, Bill Gates, Microsoft founder, who has reshaped the world's relationship with technology largely from quiet rooms. But by being an introvert, it didn't stop any of these people from changing the world. And yet for so much of my life, I just didn't see myself in them. Because in a world where there's a lot of noise, it can be really easy to overlook introverts or maybe deem them less important since they may not talk as much or choose to collaborate with others, and they are often seen as the outliers. And in my case, I know I was, because I would try and change and make myself seem loud just to fit in. But what I've come to realize is that I don't really need to be loud in order to be heard, because being quiet doesn't mean you're weak, and it definitely doesn't mean you are less important. And this isn't about introverts being better than extroverts, because we truly need both in this world. We need the people who are going to be willing to speak up and share their ideas, but we also need those who are going to think deeply. So maybe the goal isn't to make introverts louder. Maybe it's to just make the world better at listening. Because when we create a space for quieter voices, we don't just ultimately help introverts, we unlock ideas, creativity, and perspectives that might otherwise stay unheard. So I challenge you the next time you hear silence in a room, don't assume nothing is happening, because sometimes the most powerful ideas are the ones being formed in the quiet. Thank you.